All right, let's just jump right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are going to unpack a completely bizarre, hyper-modern internet clash that, believe it or not, secretly mirrors the greatest science fiction epic of all time. We're talking about a digital conflict where intellectual property law, artificial intelligence, and the ideological legacy of the British Empire all violently collide right in a YouTube comments section. Now, I know that sounds absolutely chaotic, but as we peel back the layers of this feud, you'll see exactly how two massive, competing geopolitical worldviews are colliding in real time. We essentially have an established culture critic facing off against a highly technical systems architect. So let's get right into the inciting incident.
Section 1. An imperial copyright strike. A 48-hour ultimatum.
So the crazy part is how this all started over something just incredibly mundane. British science fiction critic Damien Walter issued what is essentially a standard 48-hour copyright threat. It was regarding a video discussing Silicon Valley philosophies that happened to feature a highly chaotic internet satire image of tech billionaires and a Skibidi toilet. Now, most people would just cite fair use or, edit the video. But the target of this strike, American systems architect Kyle McLean Smith, responded with this explosive quote. "Okay, am I 6 effing Brits hankering for 1776 again?" And instead of backing down, Smith actually doubled down. He deliberately altered the image using AI, wiping out the American flags and replacing them with British and Canadian ones, literally visually branding these tech elites as foreign entities.
Just look at the sheer whiplash here. On the left, we've got Walter's very standard, institutional request to protect his copyrighted material. It's a totally basic mechanism of digital platforms, right? But on the right, we have Smith's immediate escalation. He completely bypasses standard digital etiquette and instantly elevates a routine YouTube copyright threat into a massive geopolitical act of international espionage. His framing Walter not just as a creator defending his work, but as an operative aligned with state-level intelligence.
To fully grasp what Smith is doing here, we have to look at his specific vocabulary. In his digital replies, Smith aggressively rejects any comparison to normal online moderation. Instead, he calls Walter a limey MI6 F-word, using a historical slang term for a British person, and officially declares, "The Empire has been and always will be the bloody English." Smith is actively weaponizing this language to frame this digital spat as a literal, modern-day British imperial attack on American soil. And to understand why on earth he's using this specific geopolitical language to describe an internet feud, well, we have to look to the stars.
Which brings us to the real galactic empire and Lucas's historical framework.
When you hear the word empire, your mind probably jumps straight to Darth Vader and the Death Star, for sure. But who is the real empire? For decades, fans and critics alike have debated the true historical inspirations behind Star Wars. Like, is it simply a fairy tale? Or is there a much deeper historical reality anchoring the entire mythology? If we want to decode the architect's wild claims about British imperialism, we absolutely need the George Lucas decoder ring.
George Lucas has actually been incredibly open about the fact that Star Wars is deeply, deeply political. In interviews, including a really notable one with James Cameron, Lucas explicitly stated that during the era he wrote Star Wars, America was acting as the Empire. He confirmed that the Rebel Alliance was modeled directly after the Viet Cong. Think about it. A smaller, deeply motivated guerrilla force resisting the imperialism of a highly technical, massive superpower. When we look at the historical inspirations of the Galactic Empire, we see this really fascinating blend. Lucas was terrified by the idea that democracies aren't overthrown, they're given away. He looked at the United States during the Vietnam War utilizing massive military technology. But he also looked at the British Empire, which faced its own rebellion from, as he put it, a bunch of hayseeds and coonskin hats during the American Revolution. And of course, he looked at the decay of the Roman Republic, where leaders like Julius Caesar were voluntarily handed emergency powers by the Senate, which is exactly how Emperor Palpatine rises to power in the prequels. So, space Nazis or British colonizers? Let's talk about the aesthetics of tyranny. Notice the undeniable visual parallels on the screen right now. On the left, we have a TIE fighter from Star Wars. On the right, a German Messerschmitt from World War II. The visual vocabulary of the Empire, from the stormtroopers to the aerial dogfights modeled directly on WW2 footage, to the medal ceremonies echoing 1930s propaganda films, it borrows heavily from 20th century fascism and Nazi Germany. Lucas used these incredibly recognizable visuals of tyranny because they deliver a clear, concise, hard slap of reality to the audience about the true nature of authoritarianism. But, and this is a massive but, despite the Nazi visuals, there is an overarching colonial aesthetic at play here. Have you ever noticed how the imperial officers in the original trilogy, like Grand Moff Tarkin, deliberately speak with crisp British accents? Lucas heavily utilized British actors to evoke a sense of aristocratic colonial authority. The rebels, by contrast, mostly spoke with American accents. So the Empire was designed as this hybrid, the overwhelming technological military force of the US and Vietnam, combined perfectly with the aristocratic institutional control of the British Empire.
And that perfectly sets up 1776 in the digital age, the Wizard of Oz parasite. We are bringing this historical framework right back to our modern internet feud. Notice how Kyle MacLean Smith maps the Star Wars framework directly onto his battle with Walter. Smith isn't arguing about space Nazis here, he is explicitly arguing about the British imperial framework. He invokes the spirit of 1776 to fight back against what he perceives as an encroaching empire. He genuinely views Walter's institutional legal threats as modern British intellectual colonialism, claiming he's defending the American Republic from a King of England's apostasy.
To truly understand Smith's perspective, we've got to step logically through his core theory, which he calls the Wizard of Oz parasite. Okay, step 1. He views the American Republic as a host body. Step 2. An imperial parasite, representing foreign intelligence or overarching empire logic, has infected and controls the Republic's brain. It's fascinatingly similar to real-world biology, actually, like that Ophiocordyceps fungus that researchers found surrounds an ant's muscle fibers to control its behavior collectively, preserving the brain but controlling the host from the outside. Step 3. Smith believes tech billionaires are merely foreign agents acting as a mask for this parasitic control. And finally, Step 4. Mundane actions like copyright strikes are actually legal threats being used as mechanisms of systemic suppression.
This brings us to the core of this entire explainer, the critic versus the architect and their colliding geopolitical worldviews.
Let's look completely impartially at our combatants. On one side, we have Damien Walter. He's a highly articulate British sci-fi critic, a former Guardian columnist, and a self-proclaimed former Special Forces combat librarian who analyzes cultural mythos. On the other side, we have Kyle MacLean Smith, who holds an actual US patent for a hierarchical script database that models reproducing automata, which is essentially highly complex self-replicating code. His tools are legal engineering and hard executable code. These aren't just random internet trolls. These are two high-level thinkers tackling the exact same problem from entirely different realities.
The contrast between these two is truly captivating. Let's break down their completely opposing views on the invisible systems of power threatening humanity. Walter, the critic, believes the core threat is capitalist tech elites building ideological tech feudalism. For example, he points to companies like Palantir, a global surveillance architecture, as the tools of a totalitarian state. His focus is on how storytelling and mythos shape our society. Now Smith, the architect, believes the core threat is foreign intelligence capture. He fears the parasitic subversion of national sovereignty by external systems that literally weaponize laws. His focus is on decentralized technology and fighting back with code.
And this brings us to the most profound realization of this entire explainer. Both men see the machine. They just completely disagree on who is pulling the levers. Whether you view the world through the lens of a critic analyzing capitalist tech barons or through the lens of an architect guarding against foreign parasitic intelligence, both of these men are frantically sounding the alarm. They both recognize that massive, overarching control systems are encroaching on digital freedom. They are fighting the exact same invisible empire. They just have completely different maps of where the Death Star is located.
Which leaves us with a final, unavoidable question. As you navigate the web, as you consume media, and as you watch these massive tech systems shape our culture and our laws, which invisible system of power is truly governing our digital reality? Is it the corporate feudalism warned of by the critic, or the parasitic foreign capture feared by the architect? Keep these structured frameworks in mind the next time you see a simple internet disagreement, because there might just be an empire hiding underneath it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.